Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting under the hood of the Q3 2025 results from a major player in biotech. Lots of documents to sift through.
That's right. We've got the latest filings, and the goal today is to give you the essential insights fast. It's kind of a tale of two halves, isn't it? Huge growth in some areas, but real pressure on a legacy product.
Definitely a study in contrasts. So we want to pull out the key numbers, see where they're fighting legal battles, and maybe get excited about some pretty groundbreaking pipeline stuff.
Right. So where do we start? The big commercial engines.
Yeah, let's kick off there. Dupixent, still the star of the show, it
Oh,
seems.
absolutely. It continues to be this phenomenal success. Q3 global net sales, $4.9 billion.
Wow, 4.9 billion.
And get this, that's 26% growth compared to last year. For a drug this size, it's remarkable.
That kind of momentum is staggering. And the patient numbers are huge, too, right? Over 1.3 million globally.
Yeah, the reach is incredible.
How are they keeping that growth rate up? Is it just more doctors prescribing it, or?
It's more about broadening the use.
Yeah.
They keep getting approvals for new conditions. It's approved in, 8 indications globally now?
Right. Okay.
And think about the recent wins. U.S. approvals for chronic spontaneous urticaria CSU back in April, then bullous pemphigoid, BP, in June.
Right.
And just in September, they got the positive nod from the European regulators, the CHMP for CSU over there. So they're constantly opening new doors, medically and geographically.
That sounds constant expansion. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Oncology. Libtayo. That's their own anti-PD-1, right? It just hit a big milestone.
It did, yeah. It officially crossed the billion-dollar mark in annual sales, became a blockbuster.
$1 billion.
For Q3 specifically, global sales were $365.2 million. That's up 27% year over year. Solid growth.
Okay, $1 billion's obviously a big deal. But the PD-1 market is so crowded. You've got Keytruda, Opdivo. Does this really make them a major oncology force, or is it more about a successful niche?
I think it's definitely the latter. A very profitable niche, though. They're not really trying to, fight Merck head-on in lung cancer.
Right.
They've carved out a leading position in advanced skin cancers, cutaneous squamous cell carcinoma, CSCC, and basal cell carcinoma, BCC, plus the FDA okayed it for adjuvant CSCC too.
So playing smart in specific areas.
Exactly. You don't need to dominate everything to make $1 billion. It's a solid foundation piece for them.
Okay, so Dupixent and Libtayo, those are the growth stories. Now, let's talk about EYLEA, because this is where it gets messy. They seem to be winning and losing at the same time here.
You nailed it. It's all about the transition from the original EYLEA to the new high-dose version, EYLEA HD. And the U.S. numbers, well, they tell a story.
Painful story.
Yeah. Total U.S. sales for both versions combined were $1.11 billion in Q3. That sounds like a lot, but compared to Q3 last year, $1.53 billion.
Oh, that's a drop of, what, over 400 million? Yeah. Almost 30% down year over year for their biggest franchise. That's got to hurt.
It's a huge hit. And it's this complex mix, right? The good news is EYLEA HD sales are actually growing. They hit $430.6 million this quarter, up from $392.3 million last year.
Okay, so the new version is gaining traction.
It is, but that growth is just swamped by the decline in the original EYLEA. Competition is biting hard, including biosimilars popping up internationally, plus you've got that internal shift to HD cannibalizing the old sales.
Right, the internal shift. And then there's this manufacturing headache adding fuel to the fire.
Ugh, yeah. That must be incredibly frustrating for them. The FDA issued a complete response letter, a CRL, in October, and it was for the EYLEA HD pre-filled syringe.
A CRL, so a rejection. What was the issue? The drug itself?
No, and that's the crazy part. The drug is fine. The sole issue cited was, quote, unresolved inspection findings at their third-party filler.
Wait. So this critical launch component, the easy-to-use syringe, got blocked because of inspection issues at a contractor's facility, like Catalan, Indiana.
That's exactly it. Problems at the filler. Not the drug, not the company's own sites. So now they're scrambling. Plan is to submit a new application with a different filler lined up, hopefully by January 2026.
Wow. Just shows how dependent you are on your partners. Okay, so commercial pressure, operational stumbles. But on the legal front, defending against biosimilars, they seem to be firing on all cylinders.
Absolutely throwing down the gauntlet.
Yeah.
And winning. Their legal strategy to protect the original 2 milligram EYLEA has been, frankly, very successful this quarter.
How so?
We've got confirmed settlements now. Mylan Biocon, Celltra, and Sandoz Formycon, none of them can launch their biosimilar in the U.S. until late 2026.
Late 2026. So they bought themselves basically 2 more years of runway in the U.S.
Effectively, yes. And remember back in June, The U.S. Patent Office, the USPTO, shut down challenges from Samsung Bioepis, Formycon, and Celltrion against their key 865 patent. That was huge.
So the core U.S. patent held strong.
It did. And internationally. Big win in Germany just this month, October. The Munich court granted a permanent injunction against Formycon based on a different patent, the 691. Stopped sales there and in several other EU countries.
Okay, impressive defense. But like you said, late 2026, the clock is ticking, which makes their pipeline even more critical, right? They need the next big thing.
It's not just important, it's existential. And this is where the story pivots to, well, potentially transformative stuff. Let's start with DBOTO.
The gene therapy for hearing loss.
Yeah, potentially first in class. A one-time AAV gene therapy for kids born profoundly deaf because of a specific genetic issue mutations in the OTOF gene.
One-time treatment. What's the data looking like?
Honestly, it's the kind of early data that gives you chills. They treated 12 kids, aged 10 months to 16 years. 11 of them showed clinically meaningful hearing improvements.
11 out of 12. That's impressive.
But wait, here's the kicker. 3 of those kids achieved normal hearing levels.
Normal hearing from deaf after one treatment.
Normal hearing. Yeah, it kind of resets what you think is possible with gene therapy. And you can see why they're rushing it forward, planning to submit the BLA, the application to the FDA, before year-end.
Yeah.
Q4 2025.
Wow, okay. That's genuinely groundbreaking. What else is looking exciting in the pipeline? There was something about allergies.
Yeah, this is really innovative thinking. They're taking linvoseltamab, that's a bispecific antibody they use in multiple myeloma, targets BCMA, and repurposing it for severe allergies.
Okay, myeloma drug for allergies. How does that even work? Seems like a leap.
It does, but it's clever. It
Yeah.
targets the plasma cells, the
Yeah.
factories that churn out immunoglobulin E, or
Good.
IgE. IgE is basically the main driver of allergic reactions.
Ah, okay. Go after the source.
Exactly. Early data, just one patient reported so far, a 20-year-old with severe food allergies, showed that the initial therapy caused this rapid, really profound drop in IgE levels, like 90% reduction.
90%. So you could potentially just switch off the allergy.
That's the hope. Moving beyond just managing symptoms, they expect to fully enroll this first study by the end of this year, so more data to come.
Fascinating approach. And immunology more broadly. Anything else notable?
Yeah, they're pretty deep there. Positive phase 3 results for 2 other first-in-class antibodies. These block-specific allergens, one for cat allergy, one for birch pollen allergy, aiming specifically at those tough-to-treat eye symptoms.
Okay.
And also, good phase 3 news for cemdisiran in generalized myasthenia gravis. That's an answer A therapy targeting C5. Showed it works well alone or combined with their C5 antibody, gozelimab. And the big plus, it's a subcutaneous shot just once every 12 weeks.
Q12-week dosing. Patients love that. Okay, so lots of pipeline activity requiring lots of investment. Let's look at the overall financials for Q3. How did the Dupixent growth versus EYLEA decline balance out on the top line?
It basically balanced out almost perfectly. Total revenues were $3.75 billion. That's almost dead flat compared to $3.72 billion last year.
Flat? How if EYLEA product sales dropped so much?
Because the composition of that revenue changed dramatically.
Yeah.
Yes, net product sales went down because of EYLEA, but that was offset by a big increase in collaboration revenue.
Which comes from Sanofi.
Their share of the profits from the Dupixent partnership went way up, simply because Dupixent sales are booming globally.
Got it. So Dupixent's success, shared with Sanofi, filled the gap left by EYLEA's U.S. dip. What about the bottom line? Net income.
Still very healthy.
Yeah.
$1.46 billion for the quarter.
Yeah.
Solid profitability.
Okay. Now, there was this weird item related to tax law. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act, OBBA, signed in July. Sounded like good news for R&D expensing, but it caused a charge.
Yeah, it's one of those accounting things. Long-term, OBBA is good news. It lets companies immediately expense R&D costs again, which they like, and makes bonus depreciation permanent. Great for future taxes. But because the law changed, they had to recalculate the value of their existing deferred tax assets here in the U.S. under the new rules. And that forced them to take a one-time non-cash charge of $44.5 million this quarter.
So a short-term accounting hit from long-term good news.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're definitely spending on R&D, right? Expenses were up.
Yep, R&D spending was $1.47 billion in Q3. They're investing heavily.
And we saw a big example of that spending this quarter, didn't we? The deal with Regeneron Pharmaceuticals.
That's right. An $80 million upfront payment to license a late-stage asset from Hansoh. It's called HS-2094. It's a dual GLP-1 GIP receptor agonist.
Which means they're jumping squarely into the obesity market. Joining the frenzy.
Absolutely. But the strategy seems nuanced. It's not just another weight loss drug. The idea is to potentially use it in combinations to tackle things like muscle loss that can happen with weight reduction or other obesity-related issues, playing to their strengths in muscle biology, perhaps.
Interesting angle. Planning for the next wave of metabolic treatments. Okay, one last item before we wrap. That Preluent legal win against Amgen. That must have felt good.
Oh, yeah. That jury verdict back in May was a big one. They were awarded $135.6 million in actual damages, plus another $271.2 million in punitive damages.
So over $400 million awarded, though Amgen's probably appealing. Still, that's a nice chunk of change potentially heading their way.
Definitely helps fund that R&D pipeline we were just talking about. You win some, you fund more.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this. It feels like a company managing intense pressure on its historical cash cow, EYLEA, while its other engines like Dupixent are firing incredibly well and the pipeline holds some potentially game-changing therapies.
That sums it up pretty well. They're fighting tooth and nail to manage the EYLEA decline and hold off biosimilars, buying time until late 2026. Meanwhile, Dupixent keeps growing, Libtayo adds solid contribution, and the innovation, especially in gene therapy and allergy, looks genuinely spectacular. They're betting heavily that innovation can outrun the EYLEA erosion.
Which brings us perfectly to our final thought for you, the listener. We just talked about that stunning early data for the DB-OTO gene therapy, curing profound deafness in some kids with a single shot. If these kinds of truly curative one-time therapies become more common, and the data suggests they might, how does that fundamentally shift the whole pharma business model?
Yeah.
You know, a model that's historically relied so much on chronic treatments, drugs like EYLEA or Dupixent, that people take for years, providing steady revenue streams.
It completely changes the financial equation, doesn't it? You move from selling a subscription, essentially, to selling a potentially life-altering, extremely high-value, one-off intervention. How do you price that? How do payers handle it?
Exactly. What's the value of a cure versus decades of treatment? It's a massive question facing the entire industry, something for you to think about as you follow this space.
Definitely food for thought.
Thanks for joining us for the deep dive.
My pleasure.